I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Jeff Charles, Sarah Calgill, Tim Donner, and Andrew Moran. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. It appears Republicans are in full mutiny mode as anti-Trumpers and pro-Trumpers are both rapidly shedding party affiliations. Several George W. loyalists believe the massive Trump base, they call it a cult, leaves no room for their brand of conservatism. Pro-Trumpers feel they have been betrayed by the Republican elites and are ready for a Trumpian party. And to validate the sinking of the ship, both Rasmussen and Reuters have released poll results that show a colossal hole in the vote. Sarah, you wrote a piece this week on these surveys and what it looks like for the party itself. Is this something that it could eliminate the GOP altogether, or just a brief snow squall that will blow over before the 2020 midterms?
I don't see anything blowing over by 2022, that's for sure. I've never seen a fractured party as much as the Republicans are fractured right now. They basically turned their backs on a president that was duly elected by a whole bunch of people in 2016, and they just fought him on everything. So now we're at a point where, he was running for re-election. People were out in droves, parades, boat parades, car parades, miles long. And of course, Biden is now in office. You've got a lot of honked off people in red states, and they're bailing out of the Republican Party. And then you got the other Republicans that think that the Trump people have taken over the Republican Party, and they don't want to be part of it either. So I mean, with either one of those, if either one of those sides bails out altogether, which I think they are, I don't think there's going to be a GOP. I think it's going to just go away. I think there will be the MAGA Party. I think there will be some sort of absorption of the never Trumpers into other places, maybe just independents. I don't think they'll start another conservative party. I think they'll just flounder around until, they can figure out either to take power or to just go away, because MAGA people aren't going away, not anytime soon.
Really, honestly, the future of the Republican Party right now rests in the hands of Donald Trump and what he wants to do. Because of the 75 million people that voted for him, a good chunk of that, maybe a majority, voted because of him, not because of the Republican Party, although many of them may have voted Republican anyway, given the choice. But if Donald Trump sends out the signals that he's going to start a third party, it is all over for the GOP, like Sarah said. But I would, if I had to guess, and who the heck can invade the mind of Donald Trump other than the man himself. But if I had to guess, I'd say that he's going to be very active in first going after Liz Cheney, who voted to impeach him a second time. He's already got his allies in Congress like Matt Gaetz working on that. But I would guess that he's going to be an active voice from the outside, and he will critique party candidates as to how establishment or how America first they are. And if the Republican Party thinks, like Mitch McConnell, that they can separate themselves from Trump because they're in a snit about how he handled it 2 months after the election, then they're going to find themselves in the wilderness because they cannot win without the Trump voters.
Let me just say one thing. Was anybody here surprised about the Liz Cheney vote? I mean, she wanted a vote. She had whipped the vote, and she got 145 people that said, hey, you stay in a leadership position. I mean, maybe we're just in an echo chamber here, and we're wrong. We're all wrong. And there are a lot of, dyed in the wool, standard, run of the mill kind of GOPers out there.
Well, I wasn't surprised by that vote, but at the same time, I don't think it really matters. Liz Cheney is in trouble. And it's not, I don't think it's even just her vote for impeachment. She's a neocon. She's part of the establishment, and the establishment is in trouble. I'm loving all of this. I don't think that the GOP is going to go away. I think the GOP as we know it is going to go away. We're not going back to the days of the establishment. As far as, her not being stripped of her leadership position, I mean, that was a decision made by the elites, the establishment. The real test is going to come in 2022, and it's not looking good for her. The rank and file Republican conservative voters are not fans of hers. She's polling very badly in Wyoming already. You've got Matt Gaetz out there, and it is not just her; it's the entire establishment. And we do have an idea of what Trump is doing. I mean, he's formed a political action committee who is dedicated to attacking the incumbents that are part of the establishment, especially those who supported the Democrats' impeachment effort. He, as of January of this year, he's raised over $30 million. He's going to raise more. So Trump is just pulling the hammer back. He's getting ready to go, but he is going to have a say. I don't know if he's going to start a third party. I think he's already kind of said that he doesn't really want to do that, but he's going to use his influence to go after establishment incumbents during the primaries, which is exactly what we need.
Andrew Moran, what dost thou say?
Well, I think that maybe they're afraid to go after Liz Cheney because they'd be afraid to go in the wilderness with Dick Cheney and go hunting. So maybe that's. But this could be a prime opportunity for the Whig Party. The Whig Party could make a comeback in the post-Trump era. But if I were a Republican, a principled Republican, a Calvin Coolidge or Robert Taft Republican, I would have left this party a long time ago. I would have left it when George W. Bush became president. This was a guy who he ran up huge deficits. He went into these wars. He put everything on credit cards. He expanded the size and scope of government. He had the surveillance state, and everything that Bush started and everything that the Trump Republicans despise today happened under him and was exacerbated or maintained by his predecessors. The only hope that GOP has is having people like Thomas Massie or Rand Paul hopefully lead the Republican Party in the future. But at the same time, I do give the GOP some credit because they're actually firing back. With this whole Congresswoman Green, they're starting to go after Ilhan Omar and trying to kick her off the committees by I guess using as revenge against what's going to happen with Representative Green. But overall, if anyone thought that Mitch McConnell was going to have a backbone and do something serious for the future of the Republican Party after Trump left, that's just as insane as the Q shamans when they appeared on Capitol Hill a month ago.
Well, Jeff, I know you've been pining for some changes in the GOP for a long, long time. What kind of changes have you been advocating and why? And do you think we're on the cusp of maybe getting there?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with what Andrew just said. The neocon establishment needs to go. They're still in power to a certain extent, but they need to go. We need to stop being so involved in unnecessary wars. We need a GOP who will actually appeal to all Americans, and that includes minorities. I want a GOP that follows Trump's example as far as reaching out to Black and Hispanic voters. We need a government that is actually conservative and not representatives who are just in office who pretend to be conservative. We want we want a better economy. We want lower taxes. We want less regulations. We want all the stuff that the establishment has said that they've wanted for decades, but didn't really want. So really, there isn't much new here. It's just the difference is that we want people who will actually put that into action instead of just talking about it.
I would suggest that those people in the GOP that want to go back to the good old days of George W. Bush, the George Wills, the Bill Kristols, the neoconservatives, the war hawks, all of those people. I would suggest that they look at the 2016 Republican presidential primary, where the GOP put forward every single one of their top tier candidates: Scott Walker, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and on, 17 candidates, and Donald Trump wiped out every single one of them. Do they really believe the party's changed so much in 4 years that now they say, well, let's go back to the days of McCain and Romney? I don't think so.
But at the same time, when Trump was president, what really changed in the Republican Party when it comes to the big issues? Trump ran $1 trillion deficits. He still had troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. The Patriot Act was still there. He could have pardoned Julian Assange or Edward Snowden. He chose not to. He chose to side with the Mitch McConnells and Lindsey Grahams. So President Trump, he was better than a lot of his Republican predecessors. But to suggest that he was the Messiah and completely transformed the Republican Party and the United States government, I think it's absurd.
I would suggest that he has transformed the Republican Party, Andrew, because the truth is that the Republican Party is now, hold your breath, the party of the working class.
Exactly.
When did you ever think you would say that happened? I consider that to be the most significant part of the Trump era, is that he did transform the Republican Party into a party of working class, everyday Americans who felt basically distanced from the coastal elites who were running the Democratic Party.
Exactly. That's a fundamental change in the Republican Party. Sarah, what were you going to say?
He did change the way that Republicans think. I mean, you don't bring people out of the woodwork for 20,000 people to fill up a stadium wearing red and shouting MAGA and not think the man had an everlasting impact on taking the Republican Party down to its embers. And you know, I left the Republican Party during George Bush, and I re-registered to vote for that man because he was different. He was bringing a new energy. People wanted that success. They want a winner. And now we've got people in leadership such as McConnell and McCarthy. McConnell won't even take a phone call from Trump. I mean, what the hell is up with that?
Well, he
has to go down there and beg and then say, "Oh, we're on board." They're not on board. I can almost guarantee they are not on board together.
As far as Mitch McConnell is concerned, you have to understand his mindset. As far as he's concerned, Donald Trump cost him control of the Senate. His view is that he would have won at least one, if not both of those Senate races in Georgia, were it not for the behavior of President Trump. That's his view, which is why he's not going to take any calls from him anymore, and he's going to distance himself. But who he's going to replace Donald Trump with, that's the leader of the Republican Party, who's it going to be? Him? I don't think so.
And I think McConnell, you know, if he expects us to get on board, and let me tell you, I have been inundated with financial requests from different parties, both sides of the aisle, actually, both Democrat and Republican, inundated with financial requests. And it's desperate. It's a desperate measure. They are way underfunding. Nobody likes what they're doing. People are ticked off. People that, you know, maxed out all of their donations to the RNC to help put Trump back into office. You know, I can pick up the phone, call 10 people right now, and every single one of them is going to say, I ain't giving them any money. Screw them.
But maybe someone on this panel can answer this question. Jeff alluded to with the neoconservatives. If Trump was so adamant about draining the swamp, why did he add the chief swamp creatures to his administration? John Kelly, John Bolton. A lot of the establishment Republicans were key elements of the Trump administration. Why did that happen?
I can answer that because when Trump, unlike Ronald Reagan, who came marching into Washington with an army of longtime supporters, Trump came in all by himself. He had no one supporting him. The only senator who even endorsed him was Jeff Sessions, who turned out to be a disaster as Attorney General. But he came marching in alone, and he knew in order to govern at all, he had to have some establishment figures. It took him, 2-3 years to figure out who he could trust and who he couldn't, and separating, a guy like Mike Pompeo, who he could trust, from the many that he hired that he found out that he couldn't trust. So I think that's the answer. I don't think he wanted to hire establishment people, but I think he figured if he was going to get anything done, he had to.
I've got to wrap this up, Jeff. Final word.
Yeah, I would say that, there were things that Trump could have done, like he could have done more to stop the wars and yada, yada, yada. But the bottom line is that Trump did bring about a paradigm shift on the right. And even if he did everything that he could do, he was never going to be able to bring about all of the changes that we wanted. This is a starting point. So that's why I always focus more on the GOP than on Trump, because at the end of the day, it's not all about Trump. We have to focus on the Republican Party and holding them accountable. Trump can only do so much. He can do a lot, but he can't wave a magic wand. I think he did largely what he was supposed to do when it comes to changing how the right thinks about approaching policy and approaching politics, approaching the media, and approaching the country. Now it's time to build on that.
Okay, good stuff, folks. Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy have quite a bit on the line. What will they do to save the grand old party, or is she in the process of writing her own death warrant? That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all our TV productions. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Sign up for our new member zone, just $17.76 for the year. And remember, liberty all the time and everywhere.